bosun, pipe him aboard.
Aye, aye, sir.
Fire, dress ship.
Very good, sir. Dress ship!
A brief history of man's maritime mastery. Chapter 3. The Battle at Salamis. The Battle of Salamis, fought in a narrow channel off the coast of Greece some 2,400 years ago, forever etched into history the critical importance of sea warfare. A massive Persian army, nearly 2 million strong and led by the formidable King Xerxes, had rampaged across the eastern Mediterranean. They conquered wherever they struck, and even mighty Athens fell before them. The Greeks were nearly brought to their knees. Yet, in their darkest hour, the Athenians and their allies still possessed a fleet, 300 to 400 well-manned ships. Xerxes, on the other hand, commanded more than 1,000 vessels, commandeered from Phoenicia, Egypt, and Asia Minor. But numbers alone do not decide the tide of battle. The Greek war galleys were a marvel of naval engineering. Long, fast ships, 125 feet from stem to stern, with an 18-foot beam and a shallow draft of just 3 or 4 feet. These vessels, typically manned by 170 oarsmen, arranged in 3 tiers, could cut through the flat water at 7 knots and in brief bursts reach speeds of up to 10. Despite their speed, they remained incredibly maneuverable. A trained crew could spin a galley on its axis, move ahead or astern with equal ease, and maintain whole squadrons in perfect formation, whether in circles, squares, or spearheads, with rams poised outward, creating an almost impregnable defense. The Greeks understood how to wield these ships with deadly precision. Their galleys were armed with powerful bronze-sheathed rams, placed at the strengthened bows. In battle, they would rush the enemy, suddenly closing in to bring their oars inboard and alongside. With a quick, spinning thrust, they would smash off the opponent's oars, leaving the enemy ship as helpless as a fish without fins. Then, like lightning, the Greeks would swing around and deliver the final, devastating blow, ramming headlong into the defenseless side of their adversary. It was the ancient equivalent of a modern fighter jet, firing a rocket into the vulnerable side of a transport plane. The Battle of Salamis was not just a class of ships, but a demonstration of strategic brilliance, ensuring that the Greeks would emerge victorious despite overwhelming odds. The Greek fleet was strategically based on the island of Salamis, and Xerxes knew that he had to attack them there. Yet he was wary. Xerxes understood land warfare well, but the sea was a different, more unpredictable battlefield. The mile-wide narrows between Salamis and the mainland presented a dangerous challenge. Triremes, with their 3 wide banks of oars, required considerable space to maneuver. To enter this narrow passage, the Persian fleet would have to advance on a restricted front, able to bring only a fraction of their overwhelming force to bear at any one time. In those confined waters, Xerxes' ships would be vulnerable. Themistocles, the Athenian admiral, recognized the strategic advantages of Salamis. The restricted approach offered ideal conditions for a smaller fleet, secure from flank attack, to fend off a superior force. Outnumbered 4 to 1, Themistocles knew this was the place to make the stand. But how could he lure Xerxes' ships into this deadly bottleneck? Themistocles, with his characteristic cunning and courage, devised a plan. He arranged for a trusted servant to carry false intelligence to the Persian fleet, spreading word that the Greeks were demoralized and planning to slip out of the channel, each ship scattering in a desperate attempt to save itself. The message also hinted that the Greek commanders were quarreling among themselves and would offer little resistance if Xerxes moved swiftly. The lure was set. Xerxes, eager for victory, took joy in these tidings. He dispatched squadrons under the cover of night to seal off any potential escape routes from Salamis, and ordered the main body of his fleet to launch a surprise attack through the channel at dawn. He hoped to catch many of the Greek ships still beached, unprepared for battle. The great king, eager to witness the spectacle of his triumph, established himself on the hill of Aigalios overlooking Salamis. There he sat on his golden throne, bejeweled and dressed in shining robe, surrounded by his scribes who stood ready to record the details of the impending victory so that no moment of his anticipated triumph would be lost to history. But the battle that was about to unfold would not go as the Persian king had expected. On comes the Persian fleet, like a surging river, filling the straits from shore to shore. The Persians spot some Greek ships. They must be in flight. The vast fleet sweeps forward, dark ships cutting across the blue morning sea, beating the water white with foam from 1,000 oars. Suddenly, a cheer rings out from Salamis, loud and defiant. A trumpet blasts the call to war. With orderly, intense activity, the Greek fleet moves out and forms a line across the bay. Still, Themistocles plays the fox, cunningly drawing the Persians deeper into the narrows of Salamis. He orders his ships to backwater, feigning fear of the oncoming armada. The invaders, confident in their numbers, jam the narrow sea, their galleys jostling for room, or brushing close to oar. From the Persians comes a great roar of anticipation. Xerxes licks his lips at the prospect of an overwhelming victory. But then, as Themistocles knew it would, the morning breeze springs up. It brings with it a swell among the Persian fleet, causing their ships to pitch and roll. Oars flail wildly, and the lancers, javelin throwers, and archers aboard the Persian vessels struggle to maintain their balance. These heaving platforms are no place for land warriors. The carefully coordinated attack begins to falter. Now it is the Greeks who smite the sounding sea with the even stroke of foaming oars, as the Greek poet Aeschylus, himself a veteran of Salamis, would later write. In the calm waters, the Greek galleys advance, forming an orderly crescent of menacing rams racing across the bay. Every Greek trierarch commands his trireme with precision that sunlit September morning. Every Greek freeman, at those long oars, is fired with a single idea: to crush the invader. The battle that follows will not just be a clash of ships, but a clash of wills, where the resolve of free men meets the overconfidence of an empire. The fate of Greece hangs in the balance as these two great fleets converge in the narrow waters of Salamis. Too late, the Persians realized they had been deceived. The Greeks were not demoralized, but were lying in wait, ready to strike. The press of Persian ships in the open water forced Xerxes' spearhead deeper into the narrows, where escape would become impossible. Now the Greeks fell upon the Persians without mercy. Ship dashed against ship, its brazen prow, as Aeschylus described. The rolling Persian triremes presented their vulnerable broadsides, and Greek after Greek fell upon them, smashing, rolling them over, and brushing away their floundering oars. Still the long lines of Persian ships pressed on, inexorably sailing toward their doom, unaware of their fate until it was upon them. In the confusion, the vanguard ships tried desperately to turn back, but they could not. They were boxed in, hemmed by the very walls of water that had once seemed their ally. Oarsmen flailed desperately in the swell, trying to reverse their massive oars, but retreat and retracement were now impossible. The sea itself betrayed them, lifting one bank of oars while dipping the other, making control a hopeless endeavor. And the hulls of the ships floated capsized, nor could the sea be seen, filled as it was with the wrecks and carcasses, and all the shores and rocks were full of corpses, and every ship was wildly rowed in flight. Aeschylus' words capture the horror of that day as the Persian fleet disintegrated into chaos. On his golden throne, Xerxes screamed in impotent rage. Captains who had lost their triremes, whose crews had drowned in the carnage, struggled ashore to beg for forgiveness. His fury, knowing no bounds, shouted the command, "Off with their heads." Persian losses were enormous, more than 200 ships, 20,000 men. A detachment of troops sent to exploit the anticipated victory was instead cut off and annihilated at Greek leisure. Only one small squadron, led by the cunning and perseverance of Admiral Queen Artemisia of Caria, escaped without loss. Hotly pursued by the Greeks, she boldly attacked a Persian ship. Mistaking her for an ally, the Greeks veered off, allowing her to flee. Xerxes, his pride shattered, could only remark bitterly, "My men have turned into women," and women into men. The queen's wiliness was his only satisfaction in the debacle. Soon after Salamis, Xerxes withdrew from Greece and eventually from the Mediterranean. His defeat at Salamis paved the way for the glories of ancient Greece to flourish, an era whose art, philosophy, and democracy would leave an indelible mark on human civilization for the infinite benefit of mankind.